Blessings, beloved, in Jesus' mighty name. Jesus is the way and the truth and the life, and no man cometh unto the Father but through him. So I just want to speak about something that needs the attention of the Irish public. It needs the attention of the Irish High Court. I've been through the Irish High Court. I was sentenced to 7 months in prison for holding a sign, singing about the Lord Jesus, and preaching in public, none of which can be deemed obscene, offensive, or a breach of the peace, or antisocial by any stretch of the imagination. And so, because the word offensive in and of itself is open to interpretation, and the word insulting of Section 7 of the Criminal Justice Public Order Act, it cannot be reasonably established that anything on my sign was of such a nature that it must be deemed as offensive or antisocial or a potential breach of the peace, because the person breaching the peace is the one that needs to be reprimanded, not the one being attacked. And this is what needs to be established, that you cannot give power of law to the one who's going to effect a breach of the peace. The one who comes and behaves in a way that is in and of itself by nature a breach of the peace is the one that needs to be chastised and reprimanded for their conduct. Material can be discussed, but we must have a lawful definition as to what can be considered antisocial or offensive material, and we do. The word obscene. Obscene describes anything of a salacious, lewd, or pornographic manner, or of an overt, violent nature that would, negatively impact children, specifically. So that's why we have, that would actually be an offence to a family sitting around in the public square if something was obscene, pornographic being produced there. So that's the definition in law of offensive, something of an obscene nature. Something that's of a biblical nature cannot be deemed by law as offensive, therefore cannot be deemed by any court as offensive. So it cannot be upheld that a banner containing things of a biblical nature or biblical teaching can therefore be deemed offensive, irrespective of how they're worded, so far as there are no curse words or expletives in there. So I've just written on Facebook here, Irish High Court failure. Let be properly tested. Sections 113, 114, 115 and 117. The reason I'm saying it's a High Court failure is because it was said in the schedule that the constitutionality of Section 115 and 117 would be tested. The wording of Section 7 would be tested. That's what I was told by those representing me in the High Court, that it would be brought forward that the wording of Section 7 would be tested because it is blatantly vague, specifically the word insulting. If my representatives didn't even bring that into effect and into the attention of the High Court should have acknowledged it themselves when they were going about defining the word offensive, because they must find a lawful definition of the word offensive before they can uphold its offensiveness. So let it be properly tested. The Irish High Court have failed in their schedule, what they were supposed to do on that day. They should have identified certain inadequacies in the courts previous when they deemed material offensive that was of a biblical nature. They should have identified that offensive couldn't actually be given a lawful definition and so mustn't have been addressed by the High Court in that aptitude or any former court in that context. So let's have another look. Irish High Court failure. Let be properly tested. Sections 113, 115, 117 and 117. Sorry, it's 113, 114, 115 and 117 of the Criminal Justice Public Order Act 2006, of the Criminal Justice Act 2006, which are all related sections, giving definition and mechanism to each other. In other words, Section 114 gives context to the adult behaviour warning. Other sections give the mechanism to the member of the guard to bring somebody before the civil court, which puts him out of his jurisdiction. So it makes sense that if they were trying to avoid having to actually deal with these sections, that they would avoid dealing with Section 113 and 114. But if they were actually comprehensively intending to properly test the constitutionality of these sections, they would include section 113 and 114 because, again, they give those sections definition and mechanism. So let be properly tested the use of the terms insulting and offensive in terms of section 7 of the Criminal Justice Public Order Act 1994, being that they neither of them have any lawful definition. Offensive, insulting, there's no lawful current extant lawful definition for either of those terms. The only thing we have in way of offensiveness is something of a lewd nature, of an obscene nature. The only term that we have to define publicly offensive material at present is the term obscene, which is defining material of a pornographic, lewd, or salacious nature being shown in public forum. So my banner, which I have images of, I have actual record of, I have copy of, so I can reproduce very easily without offending the law, and I know this. So my banner, which was deemed by the courts as offensive, having contained written material of a biblical nature, which was cited even on the sign as being such, cannot be therefore deemed offensive, nor a potential for a breach of the peace on my part, because it was neither obscene according to the lawful definition, nor offensive according to any extant definition, as none was established or defined by any of the courts to date. So how you can deem something offensive without actually giving a definition for what is deemed offensive is beyond any reasonableness. It's unreasonable, in other words, to say that something can be found and upheld as offensive if you haven't given a definition of what is considered offensive and founded it in any extant lawful definition or any current existing lawful definition. So they're kind of acting rogue in this. And for the Irish High Court to do that, if that's what has occurred, is even more roguish, because they're supposed to have the aptitude and be qualified and be competent at identifying these shortcomings and shortfalls, especially in the process of a judicial review, which they claim to have carried out and fulfilled. Let the Irish people recognise that Section 7 of the Criminal Justice Public Order Act should have the word insulting removed from it, as it is open to subjective opinion, lacks a lawful definition, and therefore is open to being viewed differently by different people, and so is impermissible by any established and so therefore lawful standards. So again, I repeat that. Let the Irish people recognise that Section 7 of the Criminal Justice Public Order Act should have the word insulting removed from it, as it is open to subject. And by the way, before I continue, other jurisdictions, other countries around the Western world have removed the word insulting from very similarly worded sections because they were too vague. Why is Ireland not following suit on this is, really unacceptable, especially when, long established high court structures are recognising that this term insulting has no place in Western law. Let the Irish people recognise that the Section 7 of the Criminal Justice Public Order Act should have the word insulting removed from it, as it is open to subjective opinion, lacks a lawful definition, and therefore is open to being viewed differently by different people, like different judges, or a judge and a person on the side of the street. So there's no continuity in what is considered insulting throughout society, and therefore cannot be truly represented, consistently represented, as being the same every time it's presented before a court. So it lacks a lawful definition, and therefore is open to being viewed differently by different people, and so is impermissible. You can't permit it, you can't allow it to be considered, because it hasn't been given a definite or definition, definite wording or definition, by established and therefore reasonable lawful standards. It would be lacking and remiss to test the constitutionality of any of these aforementioned sections pertaining to the Criminal Justice Act 2006 in the absence of testing the others, because they give one another context. It's like any section that has to do with defining or giving mechanism to, like allowing something to be brought before the court or giving it its exact definition, failing to actually bring all of these together and test them at the same time would not be doing a comprehensive or holistic viewing of Section 115 and 117. You can't do a proper test for the constitutionality of Section 115 and 117 if you don't do a test of Section 113 and 114. of the Criminal Justice Act 2006, because then you're not testing them in their entirety as they relate to one another. Now you might say, well, it's only section 115 and 117 are before the court. Well, even so, you can't test 115 and 117 without testing 113 and 114. You simply can't do it. It would be lacking. It wouldn't be a comprehensive testing of 115 and 117. So they therefore must test it to do a proper testing. Like if you were to test 113 and 114, you'd have to test 115 and 117. You would test 113 and 115, you'd have to test 114 and 117. You can't test either or any of them in isolation from the others, because they're all related, giving context and meaning. They actually refer to each other. Like section 115 refers to section 114 in it. So you must therefore refer to every section that's referred to in those sections you're testing in order to get the definitions and meanings for those specific sections. So it's worth saying, again, they are sections 113, 114, 115, and 117 of the Criminal Justice Act 2006. Let our High Court do a proper job in Jesus' mighty name from the people of Ireland, for the people of Ireland, and as an example for those further afield, so that they're not misled in a similar way into such vagueness, allowing for confusion and people being held differently before the law. And that's the main point, that if different judges have different viewpoints on what is offensive or insulting, they can subjectively treat people differently before the law and not consistently, given that they have a solid definition to what is being stated in the section. Therefore, it must be seen by the High Court of Ireland that if something is not given a true definition in law, it cannot remain there because it's not rooted in law. It cannot remain there because it leads to subjectivity and two judges having a different opinion, which means that two people on 2 different days in 2 different courts could be treated differently before the law, and that can't be allowed because everybody has to be held equally before the law, and this is rudimentary to law. Okay, so I just make this video for you because it's a matter of public interest, and there has been a real lack in how publicised my case in the High Court has been. There was no lack in libelling my name in the newspapers, but slandering my good name. But I say good name because that's a lawful term in the newspapers. But you know, other than that, they have had no problem with letting everything else lay low, kick it down the road, stall it, let it kind of the life go out of it and the attention go away from it. And that's what pretty much has occurred. Now they're saying that what was in the schedule, the testing of the constitutionality of the 115 and the 117, which, by the way, the whole adjournment of the appeal in the circuit court was based upon the testing of the constitutionality of 115 and 117. They failed to do that, and therefore not upholding what they promised a lesser court. So they didn't satisfy the certiorari test. And this means that they have to now hold another day where they satisfy that test. They must test the constitutionality of 115 and 117. They must work with the definitions of what is offensive so that they can uphold that my sign was in any way offensive. My sign was not offensive by any established standards. In fact, my sign was biblically cited. Therefore, it cannot lawfully be considered as offensive. That's like saying scriptures can be seen as offensive. Christian teachings can be seen as offensive. That's actually an unlawful statement for a high court to make. That's actually an act of treason by a high court. So I would not only ask the high court to be thorough going forward, but to be very careful that they're not brought under judicial review and seen as committing treason before the Irish people. Because it's not only remiss of them to fail to test these things, but it is collaborative of them or conspiratorial of them potentially to maintain and uphold such obscurities as the word offensive as it pertains to a law with a lack of any sure definition. So this is a very serious matter actually, because it allows for the mistreatment of certain specific individuals that society deems should be treated poorly simply because they have failed to give a definition. And when you fail to give a concrete definition, you leave the potential for people to be held unequally before the law. And it is precept a premise, a foundation, a fundament, a rudiment of the law across the entire Western world, that everybody's held equally before it. So why would the Irish High Court not uphold this where other jurisdictions have? They've removed the word insulting because it's too subjective. So surely Ireland should even submit to courts that have a higher throughput and have been established longer. Because the Irish Constitution is only through a relatively short time compared to other jurisdictions which have deemed this insulting word being used in public forum to give context to public interaction through social order as being too vague. Surely the Irish court must submit, or at least test, according to the Irish Constitution, what they have seen as needing to be removed. I think it was England or America or both removed the word insulting from such similarly worded texts or sections as Section 7 of the Criminal Justice Public Order Act 1994. So let them do a proper and thorough job this time. In a more appropriate case. Surely it would be a more appropriate case if they do a proper testing of Section 115, 117, Section 7 of the Criminal Justice Public Order Act and its wording, as I was promised by even my own representatives in the court. They said that this would be tested, and it wasn't actually tested thoroughly in its wording, and so this all needs to be properly done. Because that was my will, to bring the Section 7 before the High Court and have it tested in its wording. This was agreed upon by my solicitor, yet it failed to get into the schedule after so many stalls and stalls and stalls. So Section 7 of the Criminal Justice Public Order Act needs to be tested in its wording. You cannot deem material that is of a biblical nature offensive and uphold that in the High Court of Ireland. You simply can't. None of the courts prior actually clearly articulated how the material on the banner was offensive. None of them. And then the High Court, seeing this, didn't address the wording of Section 7, didn't address the application of the word offensive. This is remiss of the Irish High Court. This is lacking. This is not an acceptable standard of function for them. So I put it to the Irish people that Section 7 of the Criminal Justice Public Order Act and its wording, Section 113, 114, 115 and 117 of the Criminal Justice Act 2006 need to be tested by the Irish High Court, or they can be brought into judicial review at a higher court in a court of appeal. So it needs to be done properly at their level if they want to avoid chastisement and reprimand. Let it be done in Jesus' mighty name, for the sake of the peoples of Ireland and the proper upholding of true social order in our state. Blessings. And perhaps in those states where further afield, where people will acknowledge that this case has taken place and that they should implement similar things and avoid confusion and people being held unequally before the law, which is unacceptable.